Have you ever noticed how quickly achievements get posted now? A certificate, a new job title, a finished project, a small win at the end of a long week. The moment something good happens, it almost feels incomplete until it's shared. As if the experience doesn't fully exist until it appears somewhere outside you. And then there's always someone who doesn't do that. They get the offer, they pass the exam, they finish something they've been working on quietly for months. You might even hear it from someone else before you hear it from them. When you ask, they confirm it in a simple way, almost casually, then move on. No story, no caption, no finally, no proof. From the outside, people tend to label this quickly. Modest, private, maybe insecure, maybe trying to look detached. In a culture where visibility is treated like confidence, invisibility gets misunderstood. But psychology suggests something quieter may be happening underneath the choice not to post. Picture a familiar scene. Their camera roll is full of moments that never became announcements. A photo of the finished work, a screenshot of the email that said, "Congratulations," a picture taken in a hallway, or a parking lot, or a room where they finally exhaled. They look at it for a second, thumb hovering over the share button, then they put the phone down. Not dramatically, just naturally. It's not that they don't feel proud, they do. You can see it in the small ways. The way their shoulders drop when something is finally done. The way they sleep better that night. The way their voice sounds a little lighter when they talk about it later. They feel the win. They just don't immediately translate it into a performance. And for many of them, this isn't how it started. Earlier in life, they posted the small wins. The new haircut. The first day at a job. The tiny milestones people cheered for. Not because they were shallow, but because that's what connection looked like. You share, you receive warmth, you feel held for a moment. Over time, something shifted. Not cynicism, not superiority, just an awareness that sharing changes the shape of the thing you shared. Once an achievement is posted, it no longer belongs only to you. It becomes a conversation. People react, some praise, some compare, some ask questions you don't want to answer, some vanish completely. And even when the responses are kind, the mind starts tracking them anyway. The numbers, the timing, the silence between reactions. What was meant to be a private moment of relief can quietly turn into something measured. Research on social evaluation shows that the brain treats being observed as a real stressor. Even positive attention activates monitoring. You start adjusting yourself. You start predicting how it will land. You start thinking about how it will look rather than how it felt. For some people, that shift is subtle but costly. They notice that the moment they share, they stop inhabiting the achievement and start managing it. So they stop sharing. Not as a statement, not as a protest, just as a way of keeping the experience intact. There's also something else that becomes clearer with time. Not every achievement wants an audience. Some wins arrive after years of quiet effort, after long nights when no one saw the work, after private doubt, after small failures that never made it into the story. When people finally reach the finish line, they sometimes don't want noise. They want stillness. They want the moment to stay simple. You can see it in the way they react when someone tries to turn it into a bigger deal. A friend says, "Post it." People need to know. They smile, maybe laugh, maybe say, "Yeah, maybe." But they don't. They're not hiding. They're not playing humble. They just don't feel that urge to convert the win into visibility. And it's easy to misunderstand that, because many of us were trained to treat recognition as part of success. We learn early that being seen matters, that if people don't know, it somehow doesn't count. So when someone doesn't post, we assume there must be a reason. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of attention. Sometimes it is fear, but often it's something quieter and more ordinary. It's someone who has learned the difference between validation and confirmation. Validation says, "Tell me I matter." Confirmation says, "I know what I did." Psychologists call this internal validation, and it doesn't mean a person is immune to praise. It simply means their sense of worth isn't built on constant external feedback. They can feel complete without needing the world to mirror the moment back to them, and that changes how they move. When they do well, they don't rush to broadcast it. When they struggle, they don't rush to explain it. They live a little more of their life off screen, not because they're better, because they've learned what it cost them to stay visible all the time. There's also an overlooked social detail here. Posting achievements can invite a certain kind of interaction. People reach out not to connect, but to compare. Some celebrate you, others quietly measure themselves against you. And even if you never intended to trigger that, you can feel it in the air. The subtle tension, the shift in how people treat you, the way a simple win becomes part of a social scoreboard. Some people don't want that to happen around them, so they keep their wins quieter. Not because they're ashamed, but because they want their relationships to stay simple. They want conversations that aren't angled around status. They want friendships that don't require anyone to feel behind. And the most interesting part is how this choice often shows up elsewhere. People who don't post achievements also tend to have a different relationship with praise in general. They accept a compliment without collecting it. They let a success happen without building an identity out of it. They move forward instead of looping back to relive the moment through other people's reactions. This can look like indifference, but indifference is flat. What you often see here is steadiness. It's the steadiness of someone who doesn't need the high of celebration to feel real, and therefore doesn't have to fear the low of being ignored. Of course, there's a trade-off. Visibility can create opportunities. Sharing can invite connection, and some people use it well without losing themselves. But the person who stays quiet is often protecting something they learn to value more than attention: the ability to experience their own life without immediately turning it into something that needs to be received. So when you notice someone like this, try watching what they do instead of what they post. Notice how they carry themselves after a win. Notice how they speak about it when it finally comes up. Notice how little they need from the room. Not because they have nothing to share, but because they've learned to keep some parts of life unmeasured. And if this topic feels familiar, a softer question might be worth asking. When was the last time something good happened to you and you felt the urge to share it, and then didn't? What did that moment feel like? Relief, discomfort, quiet pride, or a strange sense of privacy returning? Because the answer usually isn't about social media at all. It's about what part of you still needs to be seen, and what part of you has finally learned how to stay with itself. If these quiet moments resonate with you, you're always welcome here. Subscribe to stay with the stories that don't rush, don't perform, and don't need to be explained.